Several gunshots were fired during a match at the Hirikwala Stadium in Pietermaritzburg in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands yesterday. And for more on this, we will speak to our reporter Velile Mnyandu in a short while. Political analyst Dirk Coetzee gives us a wrap of this week's political stories. A very good afternoon and welcome to the Week in Review. You're joining us live from our SABC studios as we take a look at some of the biggest stories to come out of this week and, of course, some of the stories that had South Africa talking. I am your host, Alisha Jali. Well, former President Jacob Zuma has suffered another legal blow in the Pietermaritzburg High Court after a full bench ordered to set aside his private prosecution of advocate Billy Downer and News 24 legal journalist Karen Moore. Zuma instituted the private prosecution against Downer and Moore in September of last year for allegedly having leaked his private medical information to Moore. The letter by a military doctor was also attached to documents which were attached to the court related to Zuma's long-awaited arms deal trial.
Proceedings lasted a few minutes, with only the court order being read out in a unanimous judgment. Besides setting aside the private prosecution, the court also interdicted Zuma from reinstituting, proceeding with, or from taking any further steps pursuant to the private prosecution. Zuma was also ordered to pay the cost of the application. In a 66-page judgment, the court found that it indeed had the jurisdiction to hear the applications by Downer and Moore. Zuma argued that the matter needed to be heard in the criminal court where the private prosecution is being heard. Downer submitted earlier that the prosecution was an abuse of court process and that it was part of Zuma's delaying strategy to prevent his arms deal trial from happening. Moore argued that the case against her was without merit and that it was meant to silence her as a journalist. In agreeing with Downer and Moore that Zuma's private prosecution was an abuse of process, the court also says that Zuma came to this court with unclean hands and that the private prosecution was an abuse of court process and that the court had to sanction such conduct. The court also found that Zuma failed to produce a valid nolle prosequi certificate to institute charges against Moore and that the summons against her needed to be set aside. The court also found that the medical letter wasn't confidential and that it was part of the public record. The court also agreed with Downer that the private prosecution was an attempt to delay Zuma's criminal prosecution and to prevent Downer from performing his duties. Meanwhile, the Jacob Zuma Foundation has described the judgment as bizarre and says Zuma will appeal.
Well, the High Court in Cape Town has ordered that the psychiatric report of alleged Parliament arsonist Zandile Mafie not be disclosed at this point. Mafie was sent for mental evaluation at the Fort England Psychiatric Hospital in the Eastern Cape. The court gave Mafie's defence a month to consult with their client following the evaluation period.
Mafie refused to be evaluated at Valkenberg Hospital, the designated facility in Cape Town for such matters. Instead, the state allowed for a 30-day observation period in the Eastern Cape. On 24 May, Judge Nathan Erasmus received a psychiatric evaluation report from medical experts. He, however, ordered that its contents not be made public at this stage.
The Act provides that a party may dispute the findings in these type of reports. And in the instant matter, the defence had not had an opportunity to consult with their client about it.
Mafie's defence counsel could not consult with him while he was in hospital.
One of the rights we have reserved is to have other experts. So it might well be that at a point where it's disclosed, then the complete picture will then be given. So we would, subject to what my learned friend had to say, maintain the position that I think we had all agreed on in
because you you're still considering whether you can dispute the findings.
Dispute or bring in other experts.
The state is not disputing the psychiatric report that speaks to Mafie's medical condition.
And we agreed as the state as well that it was in the interest of justice for them to be granted that opportunity to consult with their client, and it would have been wrong anyway for their client to learn about the outcome of the report via a public court like that without him being informed of it or even reading it.
The court ordered that Mafie be detained in the hospital section of the Pollsmoor Correctional Facility until the next court date.
He is aware of everything and he is happy, he is satisfied about everything, the proceedings, and about the fact that he will be kept in hospital section up until the 13th. He's comfortable with that.
The case has been postponed to July 13th. Mariska Botha, SABC News, Cape Town.
All right, and for more on this, we are joined, of course, by Advocate Mtabeleni, who joins us via Zoom to unpack some of these issues. Yeah, Advocate, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Look, Mafie has completed a mental evaluation at the Fort England Medical Facility in the Eastern Cape. Defense lawyers told the court that they might call in their own medical experts on the matter. Can you please unpack why the presiding judge, Nathan Erasmus, has ruled that the contents of this report should not be disclosed, particularly at this point?
Yeah, good afternoon to you and the viewers, and thanks for having me in your show. The Criminal Procedure Act restrict that report be made public without the other side having had no sight of it. That is the reason why the judge decided that at this point, the report should not be made public, and then we will then later see what will then transpire after the other side have had sight of the report, and then have also decided whether they are going to employ their own doctors to actually evaluate Mafie, and then a determination will be made then whether that report or both reports, if there are two reports of the experts, will go into the record.
All right. And then, Advocate, look, Zandile Mafie was back in court, of course, and his case has been postponed until the 13th July, and he's going to remain remanded in the medical wing of the Pollsmoor prison until, of course, his next court appearance. Say now Zandile is found to be mentally unfit to stand trial. What can we suppose is going to happen next, and what will the state's next step then be?
Yeah, fitness to stand trial, it's a very important requirement in terms of criminal procedure, because criminal cases requires intent and criminal intent, and that cannot be established when a person is not fit or compos mentis in law to actually stand trial. So the whole proceedings will then change completely and take a different turn if ever both reports actually confirm that is not fit to stand trial. But I think from reading from what the NPA has actually indicated, it looks like on their side the report confirms the fitness to actually stand trial.
But Advocate, I mean, we've seen this case. Mafie has been remanded in custody for over a year now. There have been a lot of delays also with the case. And when one thinks that the saying that justice delayed is actually justice denied, should there be further delays, or can we say that justice will be done eventually?
Yeah, ultimately what you're saying is important. Justice will be done at the end, but it is also important not to rush justice in the instances where you are dealing with a person that might not actually be suitably fit to stand trial. So this is when both the state and the defense must cross their T's and dot their I's. So that's why this evaluation that has to be conducted by the defense is very much important to make a determination on the fitness to stand trial of this person. You don't want to rush to bring a person who is not fit to stand trial, and at the end of the day, you have a mistrial based on the fact that this person's fitness to stand trial is actually questioned. So the Constitution does not allow it. And what is being done now is to allow all these processes to unfold, so that when we then have to start the trial, this trial will be done with a fit and proper person to be able to stand trial, and also further to appreciate what is actually transpiring in that trial when the reports actually come and confirm the fitness of the an accused to stand trial.
All right, let's move on to the Zuma versus Downer and Morn case, Advocate Romeo. Look, finally, of course, the much-anticipated judgment, case dismissed with costs. In your view, was this judgment expected?
Yeah, it was expected. I've previously analyzed this matter, and I indicated very clearly that it will be remiss for the court to find in either way than the way that they found it on the matter, based on the fundamentals that are brought by the Constitution of the Republic, which is Section 16 on the fundamental freedom of expression, which deals with the rights of the journalist to actually report without fear, without favor, and without prejudice. And in relation to Billy Downer, the Supreme Court of Appeal has already made a ruling that he indeed does possess the certificate to actually prosecute. So the court reached a decision which I anticipated.
And then in terms of costs, Advocate, I mean, let's look at this. Is this normal for courts to award costs to the extent that it has, particularly in this manner?
Yeah, it is actually normal. What was interesting in this matter was that the court said, this person, in a person of the former president, is a vexatious litigant. That's a very strong word by the court, and he has to actually bear the cost of these proceedings. And they actually barring him to actually bring any matter in relation to the prosecution of these two. So it is definitely very much usual when the court wants to actually give a determination in relation to cost, to check the conduct and the behavior of the person who has actually brought the application. And the court, really, the full bench in this matter was not pleased by the way in which the former president has conducted this matter from the onset.
Advocate, what I also found interesting is that the Jacob Zuma Foundation says that the former president, of course, they made this announcement that they will be appealing the judgment, given the fact that the ruling only spoke on the abuse of process. What are the chances of success? Because I've got the case number here, the ruling. It says the respondent is interdicted and restrained from reinstituting, proceeding with, or from taking any further steps pursuant to the private prosecution that is referred to in paragraph 1.
Absolutely. What you read is correct. It's what the court has actually stated, and there are no prospect of success. And we can say that without fear or favor. And the court is that the full bench that has had the matter is the one that must make a determination of whether there are a prospect of success that the other court will reach to a different conclusion, which I doubt that the full bench can actually say that. And then we will be left with a petition to the Supreme Court of Appeal that has already made a ruling in this matter.
And just in closing, Advocate, now, just for all-time clarity, would you say then, particularly in relation to this case, if one fails to get a public NPA prosecution based on the merits that the NPA stated that he didn't have merits to take it on to the public prosecution, does this then in any way suggest that the likelihood of any success in private prosecution is almost near impossible?
Absolutely, you're quite correct. It all rests on the nolly prosecute certificate, which the court has referred to it in this judgment, and indicated that once that has not been issued against anyone, the prospects of success are very low or nearly zero. So that is what the court has actually emphasized very strongly in this judgment.
Thank you so much, Advocate Romeo Mtabeleni there. He's a senior legal analyst and also he's a member of the LPC, taking us through the Zandile Mafie as well as, of course, the Karen Morn and Downer, as well as Mr. Zuma prosecution that took place this week. In other news now, the death of the investigators in the Thabo Bester escape case will not negatively impact on this case. Well, that's according to legal experts speaking after confirmation of Brigadier Jackson Mkhawulesi's passing.
Circumstances surrounding the senior officer's death remain subject of police investigation. He is also the provincial head of organized crime in the Free State Province. Brigadier Mkhawulesi has been with the SAPS for 31 years.
I think the passing on of the investigating officer in this matter is not going to impact negatively on the investigations. However, it will retard progress. Remember that there's a speed at which we are expecting this matter to be expedited.
Advocate Molete believes that this can only delay the process a little on the matter.
The investigation team will have to go back and check for the suitable replacement for this investigating officer who has since passed on. So it will retard progress, but at the ultimate end, he will be replaced by one competent investigating officer, and ultimately we will achieve, or we will arrive at the desired outcome.
Police say the deceased officer has proven himself to be a highly skilled detective with a wealth of knowledge and experience. The family has asked for privacy as they try to come to terms with what happened. Konelo Lekgafola, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Meanwhile, National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola says no foul play is currently suspected in the death of one of its investigators in the Thabo Bester escape saga. Masemola has confirmed that Brigadier Jackson Mkhawulesi committed suicide. Mkhawulesi shot himself just hours after attending court proceedings in the judgment against Dr. Nandipha Magudumana at the Bloemfontein High Court earlier this week.
With regard to Thabo Bester, any recent arrest? No, we do not have any, there is no any other arrest, but we are still investigating the matter, and we expect that, yes, there will be further arrests in that regard, because there's quite a lot of people that are involved in this investigation. It's quite a wider investigation, and we are busy with that. The investigating officer, Brigadier Mkhawulesi, at the moment, the preliminary indications are that there is no foul play. The member committed suicide, but we did, myself and General Sintumule, we did yesterday send a team there led by General Sibia to go and look at all angles and investigate the matter so that we can acquaint ourselves and be able to tell the public as to exactly what is the problem, or what is the possible cause of this suicide, if it's indeed confirmed as suicide. But preliminary for now, it comes out as a suicide. There is no foul play for now. With regard to AKA, yes, we know who we are looking for. It's a matter of just rounding all of them. We know exactly who we are looking for, at least. That I can assure you. We know where we are going.
Dr. Nandipha Magudumana is filed for leave to appeal the High Court order that turned down the application to nullify her arrest in Tanzania. On Monday, the High Court found that Magudumana did not resist during the handing over process, as she stated that she wanted to return to South Africa to her children. The court contended that Magudumana has willingly participated in the handing over process, and if she had any problems with the process, she would have raised them with the Tanzanian government. In her papers to the SCA, Magudumana insists that it is a matter of principle that consent cannot be given to unlawful conduct. Her lawyers earlier argued that her arrest and deportation had been carried out as a disguised extradition.
With regard to the appeal by Dr. Nandipha, she has got the right to appeal. Remember, everybody that feels that maybe the judgment is not in your favor, or you don't accept it, you have got the right to appeal. But indeed, we are also prepared to defend our case. We think what Home Affairs did by bringing them back into the country, there is no any illegality with regard to what the role played by all government departments. As we said, she was never arrested in Tanzania. She was arrested in in South Africa. Hence, as South African Police Service, we never wanted to be involved in her transportation or even receiving herself and Thabo Bester. That was the Tanzanian authorities that declared them prohibited in their country, and they used their laws to deport them back to their country of origin, which is South Africa, and they could only be received by those that are responsible for the population and register of this country, in this case, which is the Department of Home Affairs.
All right, we're going to take a quick ad break now, and we will be back reviewing more stories that came out of this week. Do stay tuned.
Ngicela igadini at the age of 7 years. Ngihamba nobaba ngoba bekumuntu bekayenza igadini angibonisa ngisasemncane, then ngavela ngakubamba lokho ngayenza sure ukuthi kuzoba into ezonginceda empilweni until manje ngifunde ngaze ngaceda isikolo ngayona le mali egadini. Nayo igadini lengiyenzayo yebonakala isinceda ukuthi kukwazi ukutholakala ukudla endlini njengentsha. Singabuyeli emuva, masibhekeni phambili, yonke into esiyenzayo sibambelele, singabheki izinto zomhlaba. Ayikho imisebenzi, njengoba mina bese ngithi ngiyenza igarden, nginenhlanhla kakhulu ngoba mangakwazi ukuthola umsebenzi ngiyakwazi ukuchubeka ngizenzele into yami, ngoba kwesinye isikhathi ngiyakwazi nokuthi ngithola amajarida amaningi ngiphinde ngithathe kubo bona labantwana abahleli emalokishini ngithi bangincedise nabo bakwazi ukufaka isinkwa emzini yakubo. Babisa bonke Noah wabakhela nawe wathi imvuli yeza ongena Noah wababi.
Welcome back to Week in Review as we continue to look at your stories now. Messages of condolences continue to pour in following the death of former Cabinet Minister Tina Joemat-Pettersson. President Cyril Ramaphosa has also reacted to her passing, describing her as a dedicated leader. The former minister enjoyed a long career in politics, occupying several ministerial positions, including that of Energy Minister and Fisheries under former President Jacob Zuma's tenure. Prior to her national roles, Joemat-Pettersson served as the MEC of Education in the Northern Cape Province and later the MEC of Agriculture until 2019.
Tina Joemat-Pettersson, who died on Monday, has been hailed as a dedicated leader of society. The 59-year-old from the Northern Cape gained prominence in politics when she campaigned for the ANC in 1994, ensuring the party won the first democratic elections in her home province. At the time of her death, she was embroiled in allegations of soliciting a bribe from suspended public protector advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane during the inquiry into her fitness to hold office. She was also a member of the ad hoc committee on the Section 194 inquiry, which will determine if the suspended public protector is fit to hold office.
President Ramaphosa offers his sincere condolences to the family of the former minister and especially her sons, Austin and Terence. The President extends his sympathy to the friends, comrades, and parliamentary colleagues of the late leader who was born in Kimberley and served as MEC for Education from 1994.
Last year, at the ANC's 55th elective conference, she contested for the position of Deputy Secretary General and lost out to Nomvula Mokonyane. Now, before her passing, her eyes were set on the position of Deputy President of the Women's League in the upcoming elective conference in June.
She was contesting a deputy president position in the Women's League in the coming weeks, where a conference will be convened in terms of the leadership of the Women's League. Hence, we are saying that this is definitely a loss to see when we have few leaders in the Women's League that are really in the country that are taking the forefront of leading. It is a sad issue.
We are all distressed about her passing away, and I've sent condolences to the family, to say condolences to them, it's quite a tragedy.
Jomed Peterson also served as an MEC for Education, Art and Culture for a decade in her province, the Northern Cape. Ntlantla Khatlani, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, now here's a look at a wrap of some of the major political stories this week, and we're very pleased to be joined by Professor Dirk Kotzer, who is a professor of political studies at UNISA. Prof, thank you so much for joining us. We start with President Ramaphosa's visit to the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant and later, of course, addressing the Hammanskraal community at Tembe Stadium. Would you characterize his reception as warm, and what would that mean given the circumstances that the community finds itself under?
Yes, well, this has become a very much of a political issue also, over and above the social and the health component of it, the fact that it became the focus point of the cholera outbreak in South Africa. It is obviously now under the management of the DA as the leading party in government in Tshwane. And at the same time, the mayor of Tshwane is immediately involved the two main ministers, the Minister of Health and the Minister of Water and Sanitation. So I think it has become much more than simply a political issue. And in the case of the mayor, the community didn't want to talk with him, but in the case of President Ramaphosa, it has now been very different. I think it is the fact that someone so senior is coming or has come to them. I think that was the main breakthrough for them, that the first time a president has come to Hammanskraal in a very long time in order to see for himself what is the situation. And I think this is what gave them hope and why they accepted him to be there. But the follow-up and what's going to happen in the next weeks, it's obviously the test, whether this means much for them in the end.
Prof, look, the president himself acknowledged that the government had failed people in the area. Is Hammanskraal the face of the failure of the democratic and developmental governance, would you say?
I won't go so far because there are many faces. Hammanskraal is not the only one of them. I think what the Hammanskraal is doing, it elevates the issue about water and water security and the quality of water in South Africa very much. Incidentally, just in the same time now, the Minister of Water and Sanitation announced or produced the Blue Drop report for the whole of South Africa, the quality of water, which has presented a very bad picture about the quality of water at local government level in the different municipalities. So I think it forces everyone to concentrate much more on the issue of water over and above its relationship with the load shedding and the availability of water. It's now much more about the quality of water per se. And I think Hammanskraal will in future become a symbol of where there was this breakthrough, where in the past there was lots talked about it, but not this very specific focus that it developed now lately.
And Prof, the presidency in other news also confirming, of course, that conversation between President Ramaphosa and his Russian counterpart. Do you think that the issue of attendance of the BRICS summit would have been touched on, given, of course, the cabinet meeting we are told possibly discuss options around the summit?
Yes, it most possibly was the main discussion point, because President Ramaphosa has met him a number of times or have talked with him. And the second point is obviously about the peace initiative that the 6 African countries have launched, and that very soon they will meet both President Putin and President Zelensky. So these, I would guess, are the main issues that's part of this discussion or this dialogue between President Ramaphosa and President Putin. But the matter about the attendance of BRICS and the decision by the cabinet and the general understanding in South Africa about the legal situation, I think that is part of the discussion. It cannot be avoided by the two persons, the two presidents.
And the peace mission, Prof, by the African leaders and the Russian-Africa summit, what can we expect out of that?
Well, the mission, I think, is possibly the one that will attract the most attention because it is the first time that such a strong African mission it becomes involved in an international issue which does not affect Africa as one of the parties in the situation. The situation in the Ukraine does affect Africa very much when it comes to food security, but not so much primarily as one of the parties in the conflict. So I think this is a demonstration that African countries or the African Union collectively wants to become much more involved in global issues or the political part of global issues. And I think it's a demonstration that Africa doesn't see itself anymore as sort of on the margins of these type of major global issues, but can become directly involved in. And I think for that reason, it is important. But we should be very realistic about what are the possible outcomes of such a process. It's simply too early for negotiations in terms of dealing with the substantive issues of this conflict. It is a time where they can talk about ceasefire, about confidence building between the different parties involved in order to bring them closer to the beginning of a dialogue process. But if there's no direct outcome of saying we are going to start with the negotiations in the next few weeks or so, then it's not a failure because that will be an unrealistic expectation that can happen at this point in time.
And I need to get your comment on this, Prof. In closing, in the courts now in South Africa, we saw Karen Moon and, of course, Billy Downer win their cases against former President Jacob Zuma. Can this be interpreted as a comment around media freedom, as some have done?
Yes, certainly. I think the media itself is using this as a comment on media freedom and a victory for media freedom. So that is, from that point of view, I think is very important. It says also a lot about the role of the media in relation to court cases and what is the access of the media to information that's involved in court processes. But then something which hasn't received much attention yet is to what extent, what is the impact of this or the meaning of this for the court case of President Zuma with President Ramaphosa, that private court case, because the fact that it has been thrown out, well, in my view, make the second court case of President Zuma with President Ramaphosa actually redundant. Because if the first one is not agreed upon by the judge as being indeed a violation of President Zuma's privacy rights and so on, then the second one becomes actually irrelevant.
Prof, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your analysis this week. That is Professor Dirk Kotzer joining us there to give us a review of some of the biggest stories this week. Now, several gunshots were fired during a match at the Herigwala Stadium in Pietermaritzburg in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands yesterday. It is alleged chaos erupted after the home province team Umsinga United were beaten 1-0 by the Northwest Orbit College fans. Match officials and players ran for cover, which led to the injury of several people, including technical team members. It is said that match officials were pelted with stones and chased away by an angry mob of supporters. The game was a crucial second semi-final clash by the third tier of South African football clubs to gain promotion to the AB Motsepe Foundation Championship and a spot in the national playoffs final on Sunday. SABC sports reporter Velile Mnyandu joins us now to give us more details. Velile, is there any more information on who was actually behind this shooting and why?
Well, good afternoon. Coming from live here at Horikwala Stadium. As we know, and that's what we saw yesterday, that it was the supporters of Msinga United because they first threw missiles from the stands onto the pitch, and then they followed up by storming into the pitch. And after they were chasing away us as the production crew of SABC Sport here at this venue, together with the players of and officials of Orbit College, the team that had beaten Msinga United 1-0, and also the match officials, whom I think were the main targets after that results. Then we started to witness those gunshots and the exchange between the security and some of the fans who were armed on the day. So a lot has been happening since then, and also we are back here at the stadium today, obviously for another match, which is not in relation to the tournament. And we can see that the damage that had also been done, because there's also part of the fencing that had been damaged yesterday. So at least it's back on now. But there's just some few other areas where you can see that there was a serious damage that happened yesterday.
All right. And Velile, look, the match, of course, between Msinga United and Orbit FC, do you think that the main issue of contention there was the calls that were made by the match officials as being the main reason behind the unhappiness of some of the supporters there?
I think it's important to note that the match official who was in charge of the game yesterday is a top 3 official when it comes to referees in the Premier Soccer League this season and the SAFA Elite panel. Mascolo Bambiso was part of the nominees for the referee of the season, an award that went to Abong. In fact, besides that, he was also on the FIFA panel. And even though we understand and we know that in football these things happen where the home team, there will be those contentious match officiating decisions that they'll be looking at, but on the balance of the game, I fairly thought that, and even some of my colleagues, that he had a good game. And in fact, he was professional, because remember, this was an amateur stage, and some of the most of the players are not used to the officiating standard that he came with, and I felt that he was fairly good on the day. And to be fair, Orbit College, a team that has produced the current sensation of Orlando Pirates and Bafana Bafana sensation, Munapule Saleng, the brand of football that they were dishing out was also of a higher standard. And this is the second consecutive appearance for them in the ABC Motsepe National Playoffs. So they are used to this level. So I just think that leading to this game, a team like Msinga United had beaten Dondol Stars, the team that went all the way to the quarterfinals of the Nedbank Cup, and also besides just going that far in the competition, they were then beaten by Msinga in the opening game in the tournament, and then the second game they won 7-1. So there was an expectation that it was a foregone conclusion for them that they are just going to go straight and end promotion playing in that semi-final. So the disappointment of not making it through, I think it was something too much for them to take. Hence, we saw the action that followed yesterday after that result.
Now, Velile, the Umgungundlovu Sport Confederation chairperson there, Mhlengi Maxase, says this was a blow to local football. Has SAFA made any comments yet?
It's a big blow to local football, without a doubt, and also because not just to local football. It comes at a time when the South African Football Association has been intensifying its efforts to bid for the 2027 Women's World Cup. And an area like Umgungundlovu, in particular, maybe KZN, is an area that is also earmarked to be part of the cities and the province to form part of that bid. We saw the statement coming from SAFA late yesterday about the incidents here, and I think questions must also be asked in terms of how they organized the security. How would you allow people to come inside the stadium armed with guns? And also, even today, you will see areas that are even barricaded by the police tape here today. which are areas also where I understand that some of those who were armed with guns were also sitting. Visuals that we have here at SABC Sport, and even besides that, also there's bottles that are found here inside the stadium. Now, according to the SASRIA Act, which is an act that is governing the hosting of sporting events in the country, when you are going to host a football match or any sporting event, there are things that you need to, standards that you need to maintain. And prior to this main day that happened yesterday, the crowds of Msinga had been coming to the stadium. And this would have alarmed the organizers to know that together with the VOC, people who are central to the organizing of the match, this is the kind of security that they need. And that was not provided yesterday because we saw how the private security that was here was overpowered by the fans, and then there was those gunshots as well. So as much as we see the statements coming from SAFA, we see the statements coming from the local authority, as you say, in terms of the municipality. We saw even a statement from the Ministry of Sport this morning. There are a lot of questions that need to be asked in terms of how they prepared for what happened. But I since understand that even from our side, the management at SABC Sport, because they were also concerned with the safety of our team here. But I understand that there's an update in terms of how the security for tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow is the final of the competition between Uppington City and also Orbit College, the two teams that have been promoted to the National First Division. So I think the security for tomorrow has been strengthened. There will be a lot of searching that will be done by the police, and hopefully we'll see a more police presence tomorrow, because yesterday they were not even inside the grounds, most of them. They were outside.
Velile, very quickly in closing, now I hear that you've mentioned that several, of course, organizations and representatives have made statements in relation to the chaos yesterday, but has any statement come from any of the management of the teams that were playing yesterday, particularly the Umsinga team?
Unfortunately, we have not seen or heard any official statement. The only statement that we saw was the provincial leadership of SAFA, who promised that there will be serious action taken against the perpetrators of what happened yesterday, and possibly the team who will also take responsibility for the offense, that is Umsinga. And I must also mention that even though we didn't have a lot of injuries reported yesterday, but a particular person who was injured was the goalkeeper coach of Umsinga United. And I think he was bandaged somewhere and next to his ear because he was struck by one of the missiles coming from the stands. And I think that's the only thing that we've had. I did hear that the owner of Umsinga also tried to assist to calm down the supporters, but it was not something official that we got.
All right, Velile, thank you so much for that update. That is SABC Sports reporter Velile Mnyandu joining us there for that update. We're going to take a quick ad break now. We'll bring more stories after the break.
Billions of rand will be spent to rehabilitate and upgrade the Rooiwal wastewater plant. This is an attempt to solve the water crisis in Hammanskraal and surroundings. More than 20 people in the area recently died from cholera. Focus looks at the crisis at the plant and the repercussions of these problems. That's in this week's Focus. Incisive and insightful. Friday evening at 8:30 on SABC2.
The student, they said to the teachers, enough is enough. We will take this into the street, we demonstrate, we protest to show that we are against this.
In 36 hours of the start of a march by 10,000 pupils in protest against Afrikaans, 29 people were dead and 250 injured.
The least that they could have done, yes, it was to give us a whip, not shoot bullets and kill us. Those fathers who were shooting were really killing, and were really out to kill and kill children. Now, you can imagine, I still ask, as in that song, Senzenina, I don't know what did we do that was that worse to deserve a bullet instead of a book.
Welcome back. Well, in sad news now, legendary former Bafana Bafana coach Clive Barker has died at the age of 78 on Saturday. Barker's family has confirmed his death in March this year. It was revealed that Barker had been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. He famously coached South Africa to Africa Cup of Nations success back in 1996, and one of the players of that legendary campaign, Mr. Mark Williams, a legend, joins us now just to talk us through these sad news. Mr. Williams, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, not good news this afternoon, but what can you tell us about what led to the death of Mr. Barker?
Yeah, well, good evening, and thank you very much on the afternoon, and thanks for everyone on the show. I think it's not a nice time when you have to talk about somebody when he passed on. But all I can say that what a great coach, what a father figure, what a mentor. If you needed anybody to motivate you, he had everything that a gentleman needed. And, he would never be forgotten.
Mr. Williams, I mean, maybe take us through some of his colorful and illustrious career achievements throughout his tenure as a coach, particularly in the South African Footballing Association.
Well, I think that, this was a coach that gave me the opportunity, actually. I was waiting from 92 to get the opportunity, but unfortunately, in 96, Coach Clive Barker saw something in me. He made me play with Maiso, rest in peace, for Matsinga. And he said to me, listen, I don't think I need to tell you anything. You must go out there, do what you're good at. And he never put pressure on players, especially on strikers, or let me say on myself. He always said to me that whatever you do, I don't care. But when you go onto the field, just give me what I asked you for. He would let me go a night before the game. That's how much this man had respect for me. And that's why I went onto the field and gave everything for Coach Clive Barker.
Mr. Williams, what did players appreciate most? I hear what you were saying just now, that he was a father figure, he would encourage you guys, but what did most of the players, particularly in the time that you were also active in the football field, appreciate most about him and his leadership?
I think he was an honest man. Sometimes you don't get... we look at coaches today and we say, I wonder why is Pep Guardiola getting so much out of this Manchester City team. And that is what Clive Barker got out of that 1960. He went to each and every player, not just 11 players, everybody. He said, if you perform, you play. And I think the players then accepted that he wasn't afraid. Anybody could go to him, even at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock. He said, my door is open. And sometimes I used to go 12 o'clock. I was that type of person. But you know what? He was always there to give advice. And when you have coaches like that, because I can tell you the coaches that came afterwards would never come close to Clive Barker. And unfortunately, I'm saying this, I can say it in front of them, at the back. It is a sad day, but this was the type of man that we were dealing with. He would give us that freedom. And that is what players want. Because if you don't get the freedom from the coach, and I'm not talking about me, everybody, you're not going to be able to perform for the coach. And that is what Clive Barker was good in. Team building, that he was a master in that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. I mean, in closing, what should we as South Africans remember him for? Of course, not forgetting that victory that you guys maintained and obtained in '96, which is still to this day unrivaled.
Yeah, look, I think that, it's not that what we mustn't forget. At least South Africans, we can forget about our heroes tomorrow. As simple as that. All depends what sport it is. But look, all I can say, my condolences go out to the Barker family, to every player that was with him as a father figure, to the grandchildren of Clive Barker. May his soul rest in peace. We must have respect for a great hero of this country. He just went overseas, also tried his trade there. didn't make it, and came back and gave all that he's got to the South African team. And therefore, I'm grateful to being part of that terrific 1916.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mark Williams, there on the line to us about the sad passing of former Bafana coach, Mr. Clive Parker.
Thank you.
Now, the 8th Tsietsi Mashinini Memorial Lecture is to take place at the Morris Isaacson High School in Soweto shortly, and this year's lecture will be delivered by Dr. Pali Dehlohla and Professor Zebulon Vilakazi. Discussions will include the unemployment crisis in South Africa and, of course, the future of vocational education and training in a changing world. And our reporter Katleho Lehodi joins us now from Morris Isaacson High School. Katleho, a very good afternoon to you. Tell us about the attendance and the sentiments around this lecture.
A very good afternoon to you and to our viewers at home. It's a hive of activity in Soweto. We're coming to you live this afternoon from White City, Jabavu, right at the Morris Isaacson High School. This is where, of course, we saw the march starting from here in 1976. Really an opportune moment this afternoon to remember the lives and the times of freedom stalwart, that being Tsietsi Mashinini. It's that memorial lecture that takes place every year, and this year we seeing two key speakers in the Vets Vice Chancellor and the former Statistician General Barilo Khotla. They're going to be letting us in on really those critical issues that are pertaining to the youth of today. Also, this coming through at a significant time, looking at June being a youth month here in the country. Some of those youth members are here, including also the stalwarts, some of those that were in class with Isaac, in class with Tsietsi Mashinini, in 1976 when that march took place, that youth uprising march here in Soweto. I'm going to bring into the conversation now just to let us in on what we're expecting here today, just to ensure that really we get the people to get an idea of what is happening here today. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Let us in really on what we can expect here today. Two key speakers, and we're seeing young people also forming part of what is happening here today.
That's correct. Today we are trying to go back, in time and commemorate the life of Tsietsi Mashinini. In so doing, by using the lecture as a platform to go back and revisit, the times and the subject matters or the issues that were, on top of the agenda at the time. So through the lecture, we're trying to recreate, or rather inspire, the youth of today about the challenges, the strives, the struggles that they are facing as the youth of the country, and see how they can, come over or overcome those through, change, through education, and through any other agenda that's on the table for them. So the lecture is clearly just to say we must put things on the table, subject matters that are either hot potatoes or boiling points at this time, being education, the high rate of unemployment, hence the choice of our speakers this year. We've got Dr. Pali Dehlohla, who will be taking us through the unemployment crisis that we are facing in the country. And of course, it's facing majority the young people. And then with Professor Vilakazi, we are hoping and hopeful that with his talk, he'll be able to share with us that through vocational education, what is it that can be taken away or used as a way of, alleviating unemployment, joblessness, and hopelessness in the youth of today.
Are you going to be touching on the politics of today, looking at the upcoming elections? Next year is going to be a hive of activity where those elections are concerned as well. Looking at the significance of the political life of the stalwart, is this something that we're going to see feature as well? You going into politics, the economics, and everything that pertains to really the lives of Tsietsi Mashinini?
You know what, Katleho? I think if we do that, we'll be really taking away from the mandate and the whole idea of this lecture. If we go and dabble into politics, we'll be denying the very people that we would like to inspire and encourage. So our job as the alumni of the school, and the whole idea behind the memorial lecture, is to say we are here to inspire and to encourage young people to be as brave as Mashinini and his fellow peers during those times. And through tackling those things, we hope in hindsight we shall be tackling the political issues that are facing us in the country.
All right. Matlatsi Rampomani, thank you very much for joining us on the SABC. She's an alumni of the Maurice Isaacson High School here in Soweto. We've seen that registration process underway. In any moment from now at 2 o'clock, we're going to be seeing the process move into the music space. It's called the Mashinini Maurice Isaacson Music Space, and this is where that memorial lecture will be taking place. Of course, those two key speakers are looking at the socio-economic challenges and some of the issues that are facing the youth of today, drawing back, of course, from the youth of 1976. It's back to you in studio.
Thank you so much to our reporter. They're out in Soweto at the Maurice Isaacson High School. That is Katleho Lehodi joining us there. Well, that's where we leave it as we reviewed some of the biggest stories that came out this week. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.
Are you interested in the luxurious and flexi vibes of leisure? And staying on top of fashion, beauty, and wellness?